The pharmacist's smile was a thin, tight line, a crack in a porcelain mask of professional indifference. His name tag read Mr. Gable, and he tapped a perfectly manicured finger on the polished countertop. The sound was a small, insistent metronome counting down someone else's patience. He looked from the frail, elderly man fumbling through his pockets to the young woman standing beside him, her expression a mixture of concern and quiet resolve. Mr. Gable cleared his throat, a dry, scratchy sound. "The prescription is $42.15, he repeated, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension reserved for those he had already judged and found wanting. The old man, Mr. Adebayo, looked up, his eyes clouded with what appeared to be genuine distress. I seem to have forgotten my wallet. My apologies. I am so terribly forgetful these days." The young woman, Amara, placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "It's all right, Uncle. Don't worry." Her voice was soft, a stark contrast to the sterile hum of the pharmacy's fluorescent lights. Mr. Gable's eyes flickered over Amara's simple, worn coat and her faded jeans. He saw the frayed edges of her sleeves. He saw the exhaustion etched around her kind eyes. His thin smile tightened into a sneer. "Well, that is unfortunate. This is lisinopril, a heart medication, not something one should be forgetful about. Perhaps you can come back when you are better prepared." He made a move to pull the small paper bag back from the counter. "Wait," Amara said, her voice firm now. "I can pay for it." Mr. Gable paused, his hand hovering over the bag. He raised a skeptical eyebrow. "You can?" "Yes." She reached into her own warm purse, her movements deliberate. She pulled out a simple debit card. It was not a fancy credit card with a gold sheen or a platinum finish. It was the kind of card a bank gives you for free, the plastic scuffed from daily use. Mr. Adebayo looked at her, his expression unreadable. "My child, you do not have to do that. This is my mistake." "It's not a problem, Uncle," she insisted, looking at him with an affection that was deep and real. "Your health is more important." She turned back to the pharmacist and held out the card. Mr. Gable took it from her as if it were contaminated, holding it between his thumb and forefinger. He stared at the name on the card, Amara Okoro, then looked back at her face, a flicker of something ugly, disdain, perhaps, in his eyes. He turned to the machine, his back stiff with disapproval. The entire pharmacy seemed to be holding its breath. The woman in line behind them, draped in a designer coat, shifted her weight impatiently. A child whined near the candy aisle. The only sounds were the soft beeping of the register as Mr. Gable slowly punched in the numbers and the hum of the refrigerators. Just as his finger was about to press the final button, a deep voice cut through the silence. "That will not be necessary." Everyone turned. The automatic doors had slid open, and two men in impeccably tailored black suits stood just inside. They were built like mountains, their faces impassive, their eyes scanning the room with professional vigilance. Between them stood a third man, older, with a lean, dignified presence. He wore a simple gray suit, but it was cut from a material that seemed to drink the light. He held a sleek black leather wallet in his hand. This was Kofi, Mr. Adebayo's driver. Kofi walked forward, his expensive leather shoes making no sound on the linoleum floor. He nodded respectfully to Mr. Adebayo. "Sir, you left this in the car." Mr. Adebayo's demeanor shifted. The fog of confused forgetfulness vanished from his eyes, replaced by a sharp, commanding clarity. "Ah, Kofi, thank you. I was just about to handle it." He took the wallet, his movement suddenly precise and assured. He turned to Amara and gently pushed her hand, still holding the debit card, down. "My dear girl," he said, his voice now rich with an authority that stunned the room. "I will take it from here." He opened the wallet and produced a card. It was not plastic. It was a solid, matte black metal. The American Express Centurion card. The black card. He placed it on the counter with a quiet, definitive thud. The sound echoed in the sudden, absolute silence. Mr. Gable froze. His eyes widened, darting from the card to Mr. Adebayo's face, as if seeing him for the first time. The shabby coat, the worn shoes, they were no longer signs of poverty, but of something else entirely, something he couldn't comprehend. The impatient woman in the designer coat gasped softly. Phones, which had been buried in purses and pockets, slowly began to emerge. Mr. Adebayo looked Mr. Gable directly in the eye. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but it carried the weight of an empire. "We will take the medication." He then gestured vaguely around the store. "And while you are at it, I would like to know the name of the holding company that owns this pharmacy chain. I find the customer service here to be lacking. I believe I would like to purchase it. All of it. Tomorrow morning. My assistant will be in touch." The silence in the pharmacy was no longer just a lack of noise. It was a physical presence. It was the sound of a world tilting on its axis. It was the sound of every judgment, every assumption, every sneer turning to ash in Mr. Gable's mouth. His face, once a mask of smug superiority, had collapsed into a canvas of pure, unadulterated shock. He could only stare, his mouth hanging open, at the old man he had dismissed and the young woman who had offered her last few dollars to help him. If you love stories where the humble rise and the proud fall, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on all notifications, because the payback in this story is going to be legendary. The kindness that was planted like a small seed is about to grow into a forest, and you are not going to want to miss a single leaf. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. 5 years earlier, Amara Okoro was 17, and her world had ended. It had ended not with a bang, but with the squeal of tires on a rain-slicked Lagos road and a phone call in the middle of the night. Her parents, a history professor and a nurse, were gone. They were good people, kind people, who believed in education, hard work, and the power of a well-told story. They had filled Amara's childhood with books, with the rich scent of jollof rice simmering on the stove, and with the unwavering certainty that she was loved. And then, in an instant, that certainty was gone, replaced by a gaping void. With no close relatives willing to take on a teenage girl, she ended up in the care of the state, at the Little Flowers Orphanage, a place run by a stern but fair woman named Mama Efe. It was there that Amara learned to be invisible. She learned that grief was a private language nobody else had time to learn. She buried her sorrow under a mountain of chores, schoolwork, and a fierce determination to survive. Mama Efe saw the fire in the girl's eyes, the unyielding steel in her spine. "A good name is better than silver and gold, Amara," she would say, her voice raspy with age and wisdom. "Remember what your parents gave you. It is more than money. It is character." Amara clung to those words. Character was all she had left. When she aged out of the system at 18, she moved to America on a student visa she had painstakingly secured, a dream her parents had nurtured for her. She had a small scholarship to a community college in a sprawling, indifferent city, and a list of phone numbers for distant relatives who never answered. The scholarship covered tuition, but nothing else. So Amara worked. She worked jobs that left her bones aching and her hands raw. From 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., she was a ghost, part of a cleaning crew that sanitized the glass and steel towers of the financial district before the people who owned the world arrived in their chauffeured cars. She would clean the sprawling marble floors of lobbies, the gleaming surfaces of boardroom tables where deals worth more than she would ever see were made. And she would do it all, silently, efficiently, leaving no trace of her existence behind. Then, from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m., she was a waitress at a small, greasy spoon diner called the Corner Spoon. It was a place of cracked vinyl booths, a perpetually sticky counter, and the comforting aroma of frying bacon and brewing coffee. She learned to balance 3 plates on one arm, to remember the regulars' orders, and to smile even when her feet felt like they were on fire. Her life was a relentless cycle of work and study, fueled by cheap noodles and an iron will. She lived in a tiny, 400-square-foot apartment she shared with a roommate, Chloe, to split the exorbitant rent. And Chloe was a trial of a different kind. Chloe was a girl who lived her life on Instagram, curating a flawless existence built on credit card debt and cheap knockoffs. She worked part-time at a boutique clothing store, but spoke as if she were a global fashion buyer. She looked at Amara's life not with sympathy, but with a kind of fascinated disgust, as if Amara were a curious specimen in a zoo. "What is it that you're eating?" Chloe would ask, wrinkling her nose at the pot of pepper soup Amara was simmering on the stove, the fragrant steam filling their tiny kitchen. "It smells ethnic." "It's from my home," Amara would reply quietly, not taking the bait. "It's Nigerian." Chloe would shudder theatrically. "Well, try to open a window. I have a date coming over, and I don't want my hair to absorb the flavor." The cruelty was constant, 1,000 tiny paper cuts a day. Chloe would borrow Amara's meager groceries without asking. She would complain about the single bare light bulb in Amara's room, calling it depressing. She would leave passive-aggressive notes about the dishes, even though Amara was the only one who ever seemed to wash them. The worst was when Chloe would parade her dates through the apartment, loud, boorish men who appraised Amara with the same dismissive glance as Chloe. One evening, Amara came home exhausted to her core. Her shift at the diner had been brutal. A 12-top of rowdy college students had run her ragged and left a $3 tip on a $100 bill. Her feet were throbbing, and all she wanted was a hot shower and the quiet of her room. She opened the door to find Chloe and a new boyfriend lounging on their shabby sofa, surrounded by empty takeout containers. "Oh, it's you," Chloe said, not bothering to get up. "The landlord called. Rent is due tomorrow. You have your half, right? It's $750. Don't be late this time." Amara's stomach clenched. She had the money. She always had the money. She budgeted every single penny. But Chloe's tone, the implication that she was unreliable, stung. "Yes, Chloe, I have it." "Good," Chloe said, turning her attention back to her date. "Because I just bought these amazing new shoes and I literally cannot afford any financial drama right now." She kicked her leg up to show off a pair of bright red heels, the brand name loud and ostentatious. Amara just nodded, retreating to her room. She closed the door and leaned against it, the sound of Chloe's shrill laughter seeping through the thin wood. She sank onto her small mattress on the floor, pulling out a worn photograph of her parents from under her pillow. They were smiling, standing in front of their modest home in Lagos, the bougainvillea bright and beautiful behind them. In the photo, she was a little girl, held securely in her father's arms. She traced their faces with her finger, a single tear rolling down her cheek. Mama Efe was right. Character was what they had given her. The ability to endure, to work hard, to remain kind in a world that was often anything but. Chloe could have her red shoes and her fleeting validation. Amara had something more. She had a good name. And she had a memory of love that was more real and lasting than anything that could be bought with a credit card. She had to believe that was enough. It had to be. It was on a Tuesday, 3 months into her job at the Corner Spoon, that she met him. He came in during the afternoon lull, that quiet, forgotten time between the lunch rush and the dinner crowd. He was an older man, maybe in his late 60s, with kind, tired eyes and a halo of graying hair. He wore a simple, slightly rumpled coat over a faded polo shirt and drove an old, dented Toyota Camry that he parked carefully by the curb. He didn't look like anyone special. He looked like someone's grandfather. He chose a small booth in the corner, the one with a tear in the vinyl that someone had tried to fix with duct tape. Amara approached with a glass of water and a menu. "Coffee?" she asked with her practiced, gentle smile. He looked up at her, and his eyes seemed to see her, really see her, in a way most customers didn't. They usually looked through her, at the menu, at the salt shaker, at their phones. But he looked right at her face. "Yes, please. Black. And thank you." His name, she would learn, was Tunde. He became a regular. He came in every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, always sat in the same booth, and always ordered the same thing, a black coffee and a bowl of the soup of the day. He was quiet, reading an old dog-eared paperback novel and making notes in the margins. Amara found herself looking forward to his visits. He was an island of calm in her chaotic day. He never complained, never rushed her, never demanded anything. He just sat and read and drank his coffee. Sometimes he would look up as she refilled his cup and ask her a question. "How are your studies coming along, Amara?" Or, "That is a beautiful melody on the radio. Do you know the artist?" He learned her name from her name tag, and he used it every time. He asked about her classes, and he listened, truly listened, to her talk about the complexities of macroeconomics or the beauty of a line of poetry. He spoke with a soft, melodic accent that reminded her of home, a hint of Yoruba in his English. One rainy afternoon, he came in looking more tired than usual. He was shivering slightly, and his face was pale. Amara took his order, but instead of bringing him the watery split-pea soup of the day, she went into the kitchen. She had brought a small container of her own pepper soup from home for her dinner. It was rich and spicy, filled with goat meat and fragrant herbs, a recipe her mother had taught her. It was a taste of her childhood, a cure for everything from a common cold to a broken heart. On impulse, she heated it up and brought it out to him in one of the diner's bowls. "This is on the house, Uncle," she said softly, using the respectful term from her culture. "It will warm you up. It's Nigerian pepper soup." He looked down at the steaming, aromatic bowl, then up at her. His eyes were shining with an emotion she couldn't quite decipher. He took a spoonful, and a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. "It's perfect," he said, his voice thick. "It tastes like home. Thank you, my child. Thank you." He ate every last drop. When he paid his bill, he always left a $5 tip on a $3 check. He looked at her seriously. "You have a kind heart, Amara. Don't ever let the world harden it." That small act of kindness, giving away her own dinner, changed something between them. He started talking more, not about himself, but about the world. He spoke of business, not as a way to accumulate wealth, but as a way to build things, to create jobs, to solve problems. He spoke of integrity, of one's word being a bond. He sounded like her father. She found herself telling him things she told no one else, about her parents, about the orphanage, about her dreams of one day finishing her business degree and starting a small textile company, importing beautiful Ankara fabrics like the ones her mother used to wear. He would listen intently, nodding, his gaze never wavering. He saw the ambition glittering beneath her exhaustion, the strength forged in the fires of her grief. What he didn't tell her was that his name wasn't just Tunde. It was Tunde Adebayo. He wasn't just a retiree reading paperbacks in a diner. He was the founder and CEO of Adebayo Holdings, a global conglomerate with interests in energy, telecommunications, and real estate. His net worth was estimated to be $5.3 billion. The old Toyota Camry was one of 24 cars he owned. He just preferred it. The shabby coat was a deliberate choice. Mr. Adebayo was a man who had everything and felt he had nothing. His wife, the love of his life, had passed away a decade ago. His two sons, raised in unimaginable luxury, were a profound disappointment. They were men who understood the price of everything and the value of nothing. They saw his empire not as a legacy to build upon, but as a treasure chest to be plundered. They were waiting for him to die. He had spent the last 2 years in a state of quiet despair, searching for something he wasn't even sure existed anymore: authentic human goodness. He had been burned so many times by people who wanted his money, who feigned affection for a seat at his table. So he had created this persona, the humble, lonely old man. He went to simple places, diners and parks and libraries, watching, waiting. He was testing the world, and the world had consistently failed his test. Until Amara. His driver and confidant of 30 years, Kofi, was deeply skeptical of the whole endeavor. They would sit in the back of the Camry a block away from the diner before Mr. Adebayo went in. "Sir, with all due respect, this is becoming a strange hobby," Kofi said one afternoon, his voice a low, dry rumble. "Are you sure about this girl? She is a waitress." Mr. Adebayo smiled, a rare, genuine expression. "She is more than that, Kofi. You should have seen her. She gave me her own food because I looked cold. She didn't want anything. She didn't know who I was. She just gave." Kofi sighed, polishing his glasses with a silk cloth. "A bowl of soup. Sir, your sons would buy you a restaurant and name it after you if they thought it would get them a bigger share of the inheritance." "That is precisely the point, my friend," Mr. Adebayo said, his gaze distant. "They would buy the restaurant. She shared her meal." He got out of the car, leaving Kofi to shake his head, a flicker of grudging admiration in his eyes. He had seen his boss disappointed by family, betrayed by partners, and swindled by charities. He had never seen him this hopeful. The bond between Amara and Mr. Adebayo deepened over the next 6 months. It became a quiet, unspoken cornerstone of her week. He was the father figure she had lost, a source of steady, unassuming support. He never offered her money, never made grand gestures. Instead, he offered something far more valuable: his time and his attention. He'd bring her articles about textile importing, neatly clipped from the Wall Street Journal. He'd ask her to explain her economic theories to him, and he would debate them with a surprising sharpness. One afternoon, she came into her shift at the diner with her face pale and her eyes red-rimmed. Chloe had been particularly cruel that morning. A small, intricately carved wooden bird her father had given her, one of the few possessions she had from her old life, had been accidentally knocked off her dresser and broken. Chloe's apology had been flippant. "Oops, it was just a dusty old thing anyway." Amara had held the splintered pieces in her hand, feeling a grief so sharp and fresh, it was as if she had lost her father all over again. She hadn't said a word. She had just swept up the pieces and thrown them away before Chloe could see her cry. Mr. Adebayo saw her distress immediately. He didn't press. He just waited until she brought his coffee. "Is everything all right, my child?" The simple, paternal kindness in his voice broke through her carefully constructed walls. The tears she had been holding back all day welled in her eyes. She just shook her head, unable to speak. He reached across the table and patted her hand. "It is all right. Whatever it is, you are stronger than it. I know this." Later, when he left, he placed a small, neatly wrapped package on the table next to his usual tip. Amara opened it after her shift, sitting alone in the empty diner. Inside was a book, a collection of Nigerian poetry. Tucked inside the cover was a note written in elegant script. "Words, like memories, can be a home when you feel you have none. Be well, Tunde." She held the book to her chest and cried. Not tears of sadness, but tears of gratitude. It was the first gift she had received since her parents died. In a life that was about taking orders, taking abuse, taking on debt, someone had given her something, freely and with understanding. She felt seen, truly seen. Meanwhile, Mr. Adebayo was setting plans in motion. He had his legal team, the best in the country, looking into Amara's immigration status, her academic record, everything. The reports that came back only confirmed what his heart already knew. She was exceptional, top of her class, not a single demerit on her record. Her visa was tied to her student status, a precarious thread that could be snipped at any time. "Kofi, what is the best way to give someone the world without scaring them away?" Mr. Adebayo asked one evening as they drove through the city, the lights of the skyscrapers they owned blurring past the window. Kofi was silent for a long moment. "You cannot, sir. The world is a heavy thing. You can only give them a foundation and the tools to build their own. And perhaps a map to avoid the vipers." Mr. Adebayo nodded slowly. A foundation. Yes, that's it. He had spent his life building an empire of concrete and steel, of assets and liabilities. Now he would build something else. He would build a future for a girl who had nothing but character. He decided it was time for the final test. Not for her, because he knew she would pass, but for the world around her. He wanted to see, with his own eyes, how people would treat her when they thought she had nothing, and how they would treat him when they thought he was just a forgetful old man on the verge of a health crisis. He needed one last, irrefutable piece of evidence before he changed her life forever. The plan was simple, yet cruel in its design. He had been monitoring his own health meticulously for years, and he knew the signs of fluctuating blood pressure. He would intentionally miss his morning dose of lisinopril. It wouldn't be dangerous for a short period, but it would be enough to make him feel genuinely unwell. A slight dizziness, a shortness of breath. The symptoms would be real. His distress would be real. Only his poverty would be a performance. The following Tuesday, he arrived at the diner looking visibly pale and unsteady. Amara rushed to his side the moment he walked in, helping him to his usual booth. "Uncle, are you okay? You don't look well." He gave her a weak smile. "Just a bit dizzy, my child. I think my blood pressure is acting up. I foolishly forgot to take my medication this morning. There is a pharmacy just down the street. I think I need to go now." "Of course," she said, her brow furrowed with worry. "Let me walk with you. My break is in 10 minutes. No, it should be now," he insisted, a note of gentle urgency in his voice. "Can you come with me? I feel a little unsteady on my feet." Her boss, a gruff but fair man named Sal, saw the scene from behind the counter. "Go on, kid," he grunted. "I'll cover your tables. Make sure the old man's okay." "Thank you, Sal," Amara said, throwing her apron on a stool. She gently helped Mr. Adebayo to his feet, her arm securely around his. He leaned on her, a theatrical gesture that was also grounded in a genuine physical unease. Together, they walked the short block to the Well Now pharmacy, its green and white sign a beacon of sterile promise. As they walked, Mr. Adebayo felt a pang of guilt.
He was manipulating her, orchestrating this scenario to prove a point he already knew to be true. But it was necessary. When he revealed his world to her, she would have to navigate a sea of sycophants and predators. She needed to understand, viscerally, the duality of the world she was about to enter. How quickly smiles could turn to sneers, and back again, based on the perceived contents of a wallet. This scene was not just a test, it was a lesson. They entered the pharmacy, the automatic doors sighing open. The air was cool and smelled of antiseptic and faint perfume. And there, behind the counter, stood Mr. Gable, a man whose soul had been starched as stiff as his white coat. He was exactly the kind of person Mr. Adebayo was looking for, a petty tyrant of a small kingdom, a gatekeeper who judged the worth of others based on their appearance. Mr. Adebayo began his performance. He approached the counter, feigning a bit more breathlessness than he actually felt. He explained the situation, that his doctor had called in a refill, that he had forgotten his wallet. He played the part of the slightly confused, embarrassed elderly man to perfection, and Mr. Gable responded exactly as predicted. His patience was thin, his questions sharp, his tone dismissive. He looked at Mr. Adebayo's worn coat and Amara's worried face and made a swift, brutal calculation. These people were a waste of his valuable time. He found the prescription in the system, lisinopril, 10 milligrams. He packaged it, his movements clipped and efficient. Then he announced the price, $42.15, with a finality that suggested he knew it was a sum they couldn't possibly produce. And so the stage was set. Mr. Adebayo fumbled through his empty pockets, his face a mask of mounting panic. I seem to have forgotten my wallet. My apologies. I am so terribly forgetful these days. Amara, bless her pure, unhesitating heart, stepped in immediately. It's all right, Uncle. Don't worry. The concern in her voice was a balm, a stark contrast to the pharmacist's cold indifference. Mr. Gable's sneer was the final piece of the puzzle. Well, that is unfortunate. He was about to dismiss them, to cast them out of his pristine domain. But he had underestimated Amara. He had underestimated the power of a good name, of a character forged in loss and tempered by hardship. "Wait," she said, her voice ringing with a quiet strength that seemed to surprise even herself. "I can pay for it." In the back of his mind, Mr. Adebayo could hear Kofi's voice, a dry whisper of commentary. "Checkmate, sir." He watched as she pulled out her debit card, a simple piece of plastic that was, in that moment, more valuable than all the gold in Fort Knox. He saw the pharmacist's disdain. He felt the weight of the moment, the perfect, crystalline culmination of his long and lonely search. Amara was about to spend nearly all the money she had in the world. He knew from his private inquiries that her bank account held a meager $47.32 on a near stranger, an old man in a shabby coat. She was offering everything she had. And that's when he knew it was time to stop the performance. It was time to end the test. It was time to begin the lesson. He raised a hand to stop her, just as Mr. Gable was about to run her card. "My child, you do not have to do that. This is my mistake." But she insisted, her loyalty absolute. "Your health is more important." He let the moment hang in the air for a beat longer, letting the sheer, unadulterated goodness of her act settle over the sterile environment. He saw the impatience of the woman behind them, the boredom of the pharmacist. He saw a world that was blind to what was truly happening, a world that couldn't see the queen standing before them in a simple coat. And then he gave the signal. It was a subtle gesture, a slight turn of his head towards the door, a look he and Kofi had perfected over 30 years. It meant Now. The doors slid open. Kofi entered, flanked by the two bodyguards. The atmosphere in the pharmacy shifted instantly. Power, real and undeniable, had just walked in. Kofi's suit was worth more than Mr. Gable's car. The bodyguards radiated an aura of contained force that made the air crackle. Kofi's deadpan delivery was perfect. "Sir, you left this in the car." Mr. Adebayo took the wallet. The fog lifted. The command returned to his voice. And he looked at Amara, this girl who was more of a daughter to him than his own blood, and his heart swelled with a fierce, protective pride. "My dear girl, I will take it from here." He placed the black card on the counter. The quiet thud was a gavel, signaling the end of one life and the beginning of another. He watched Mr. Gable's face crumble, the edifice of his smugness collapsing into dust. The pharmacist's eyes, which had been so full of judgment, were now empty, hollowed out by a reality he could not process. He was staring at a ghost, a billionaire who had been masquerading as a beggar in his store. Mr. Adebayo leaned in, his voice a low, confidential murmur that was somehow audible to everyone in the silent room. "You know, Mr. Gable, my mother, may she rest in peace, was a market woman in Ibadan. She sold yams and peppers. She did not have much, but she taught me something very important. She taught me that you can judge the quality of a person's heart by how they treat the person who is buying a single yam, not the one who is buying the whole basket. She said to always be kind to the one with the small coin, because you never know if they are a king in disguise, or simply a person who needs your kindness more than your judgment." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You, Mr. Gable, have failed to learn this lesson." He straightened up, his voice returning to a normal, business-like tone. "We will take the medication. And as for the well-now pharmacy chain, I am quite serious. My family office will wire the funds to your parent company by noon tomorrow. Consider it a hostile takeover. My first order of business will be a complete review of all management personnel. We will be instituting a new training program. We will call it the Yam Seller's Principle." He turned his back on the shell-shocked pharmacist and faced Amara. Her face was a kaleidoscope of emotions: confusion, shock, disbelief. Her mouth was slightly open, her eyes wide. She looked from Mr. Adebayo to Kofi, to the bodyguards, to the impossible black card still sitting on the counter. "Uncle, Tunde, what is happening?" she whispered. He smiled, a wide, warm, genuine smile, the first she had ever seen on his face. He took her hand, the one still holding her debit card. "Come, my child, let's go somewhere we can talk. I believe I owe you an explanation. And a new life." He led her out of the pharmacy, leaving behind a tableau of frozen figures and shattered assumptions. The woman in the designer coat was now filming the whole thing on her phone. Mr. Gable was leaning against the counter for support, his face the color of spoiled milk. The world had been turned upside down, all because of a bowl of pepper soup, a forgotten wallet, and an act of kindness that was about to be repaid 1,000,000,000-fold. Kofi drove them not in the old Camry, but in the car that had been waiting a block away, a gleaming black Rolls-Royce Phantom. The interior was a hushed world of soft leather and polished wood. Amara sank into the seat, feeling as if she had fallen into a dream. She looked at Mr. Adebayo, who was now sitting opposite her, his shabby coat looking absurd in the opulent surroundings. He began to talk. He told her everything. His real name, Tunde Adebayo, the company he had built from nothing, the death of his wife, the disappointment of his sons, his lonely search for someone of character, someone worthy of a legacy, not of money, but of values.
He told her how he had created his simple persona to test the world, and how for 2 years the world had failed. People were either dismissive and cruel, or they were cloyingly false, sensing an opportunity. Then he walked into the corner spoon. "And then I met you," he said, his voice soft. "You, who smiled when you were tired. You, who asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. You, who gave me your own dinner because you thought I was cold. You never asked for anything. You never expected anything. In a world of takers, you were a giver." Amara was speechless. Her mind was reeling, trying to connect the kind, quiet Uncle Tunde from the diner with the titan of industry sitting before her. The scale of it was impossible to grasp. $5.3 billion. It wasn't a number, it was an alternate reality. But why the pharmacy? Why that whole scene? She finally managed to ask. He sighed, his expression turning serious. "That, my dear Amara, was a lesson. I needed you to see, with your own eyes, the ugliness of a world that judges by the cover. Men like Mr. Gable are everywhere. They will bow to you now because of my name, because of my money. But yesterday, they would have stepped over you. I never want you to forget the look on that man's face. I never want you to forget the feeling of being dismissed, because that memory will keep your heart pure. It will remind you to always see the person, not their station." The Rolls-Royce glided through a set of imposing iron gates and up a long, winding driveway. It stopped before a house, no, a mansion, that looked more like a museum, a sprawling estate of white stone and glass overlooking the city. "Welcome to your new home," Mr. Adebayo said simply. Amara felt the tears coming then, a hot, overwhelming flood. It wasn't the mansion or the car or the money. It was the crushing, beautiful weight of it all. The fact that this powerful man had seen her, had chosen her, not for what she could do for him, but for what she was. He had seen the girl her parents had raised. He had seen the good name Mama Efe had told her to protect. She began to cry, deep, shuddering sobs of shock and relief and a grief she hadn't realized she was still carrying. Mr. Adebayo didn't speak. He just passed her a silk handkerchief and waited patiently for the storm to pass. When her tears subsided, she looked at him, her eyes puffy but clear. "Why me?" she asked again, the question at the very core of her disbelief. He reached out and gently patted her cheek, his touch paternal and comforting. "Because you passed the test, Amara. But more than that, because when you thought I had nothing, you offered me everything. And now, it is my turn." The aftermath was swift and decisive. Mr. Gable was, as promised, fired the next day. The new CEO of the Well Now pharmacy chain, a sharp young woman, promoted from within, instituted the Yam Sellers Principle as a core part of the company's mandatory customer service training. Mr. Adebayo's lawyers handled everything. Amara was legally adopted by him within a matter of weeks. Her precarious student visa was replaced with a permanent residency, sponsored by one of the most powerful men in the country. A trust fund of staggering proportions was established in her name, but with a crucial stipulation. She could not touch the principal for 10 years. She would be given a generous allowance for living and education, but Mr. Adebayo was adamant. "This is not a lottery ticket," he told her. "It is a foundation. I am giving you the tools. You must still build the house." Amara moved out of the tiny apartment she shared with Chloe. The day she went to collect her few belongings was a scene she would never forget. Chloe was there, her face a mask of disbelief and envy. She had seen the story on a viral news clip filmed by the woman in the pharmacy. Waitress pays for billionaire's medicine, gets adopted. "Oh my God, Amara, is it true?" Chloe gushed, her voice dripping with a false sweetness that was nauseating. "You're like a princess. That is so amazing. We should totally go shopping. I mean, you're my best friend, my roommate. I always knew you were special." Amara looked at the girl who had mocked her food, belittled her clothes, and broken the last memento of her father. She felt no anger, only a profound, weary pity. "No, Chloe, we weren't friends. A friend wouldn't have treated me the way you did." She picked up her single cardboard box of belongings, her books, her parents' photograph, a few items of clothing. "I wish you well." Chloe's face contorted with rage as the sweet facade crumbled. "You're really going to be like that? After all I did for you? I let you live here. You're just going to walk out and forget about me? You're selfish, ungrateful." Amara didn't wait to hear the rest. She walked out the door and didn't look back. 2 months later, she heard through a mutual acquaintance that Chloe had been evicted. Unable to cover the $1,500 rent on her own and buried under a mountain of credit card debt, she had lost everything. Her downfall wasn't orchestrated by Amara or Mr. Adebayo. It was simply the natural consequence of a life built on a foundation of sand. Amara, meanwhile, flourished. She enrolled at the city's top university, pursuing her business degree with a renewed passion. She was no longer exhausted, no longer running on fumes. She had tutors, resources, and the quiet, unwavering support of her new father. They ate dinner together every night in the mansion's cavernous dining hall, which Amara insisted they furnish with a small, simple table so they wouldn't have to shout. The first meal she cooked for him and the state-of-the-art kitchen was, of course, a huge pot of Nigerian pepper soup. She didn't change. The money didn't corrupt her. It simply removed the obstacles that had stood in her way. She dressed in simple, elegant clothes, but took more pleasure in setting up a charitable foundation in her parents' name than in buying designer handbags. The foundation provided scholarships for orphans, just like her. She never forgot where she came from. Once a month, she would go back to the Corner Spoon, not as a customer, but to help Sal during the lunch rush. She'd put on an apron and sling plates, her movements still efficient and graceful. She'd talk to the regulars, who were now in awe of her, and she would treat them with the same kindness and respect as before. Sal had tried to refuse her help, but she insisted. "This place was good to me, Sal. It kept me afloat. I won't forget that." Her dream of a textile company became a reality. With Mr. Adebayo's guidance and capital, she launched Okoro Fabrics, a fair trade company that imported authentic African textiles, ensuring the female artisans in Nigeria and Ghana were paid a living wage. The company was a reflection of her values, ethical, beautiful, and rooted in her heritage. The logo for the company was a simple, elegant drawing of a wooden bird. Mr. Adebayo's two sons were, predictably, furious. They contested the adoption. They sued for control of the company. They slandered Amara in the press. But their father had been meticulous. The legal framework he had built around Amara was ironclad. Their challenges were dismissed, one by one. In the end, they were left with their hefty trust funds, but were stripped of any real power within the company. They were rich, but they were irrelevant. They had the inheritance, but Amara had the legacy. One day, about a year after the pharmacy incident, Amara was visiting the first community center her foundation had funded. It was in a poor neighborhood, offering after-school programs and hot meals for children. As she was leaving, she saw a woman huddled on a bench across the street. The woman's clothes were dirty, her hair was matted, and she had the hollowed-out look of someone who had lost a long and brutal fight with the world. It was Chloe. Their eyes met across the street. For a moment, Amara saw a flash of the old arrogance in Chloe's eyes, quickly replaced by shame, then by a desperate, pleading hope.
She probably expected Amara to gloat, to walk past with her head held high. Instead, Amara crossed the street. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't lecture her. She just looked at her with a deep, sorrowful compassion. "Are you hungry, Chloe?" she asked softly. Chloe, for the first time in her life, was rendered utterly speechless. She could only nod, tears streaming down her dirty face. Amara took her inside the community center and got her a hot meal. She gave her the number for a women's shelter and a city-funded job program. She gave her $100 from her wallet. "I hope you find your way," she said, and then she left. It was not forgiveness, not exactly. It was closure. It was the final, quiet act of a queen who understood that true power wasn't in punishing enemies, but in lifting up the fallen. The story ends not with a grand wedding or a dramatic confrontation, but on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Amara, now 25, a confident and successful businesswoman, sits with Mr. Adebayo on a bench in a park. He is older now, more frail, but his eyes are bright with pride and peace. He has found his heir. His legacy is secure. "Thank you," she says suddenly, looking at him. "For what?" he asks, though he knows. "For the money? The company?" "No," she says, shaking her head. "Thank you for seeing me." He pats her hand, the same way he did in the diner all those years ago. "Character, my child, is its own light. It cannot be hidden for long."
I did not give you the light. I only opened the curtains so the rest of the world could see it too.
You see, the ultimate measure of a person's worth is never found on a bank statement or in a stock portfolio. It is not written in the brand of their clothes or the size of their house. True wealth is character. It's the quiet decision to share your last meal, to offer your last few dollars, to show kindness when you have every reason to be bitter. It is the gold that is spun not from money, but from integrity. A good name, as Mama Effie knew, truly is better than silver and gold. Because while money can be lost in an instant, a person's character is the one true thing they can build that will last forever. If this story moved your heart, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because every tale has a lesson, and Alfred's Folk Tales never forgets.